students, myself Dr. Kamlesh Gakhar, Professor in Economics from Institute of Management Studies and Research, Maharishi Dayanand University, Rohtak. After having discussed aggregate demand in detail, in this lecture we are going to study about the short-run aggregate supply and equilibrium with the help of aggregate demand and short-run aggregate supply. The objective of this lecture is to enable you to understand what is short-run aggregate supply curve, why does short-run aggregate supply curve slope upward, how the equilibrium is achieved in the economy, and the impact of change in aggregate demand and aggregate supply on equilibrium. For this lecture will include meaning of short-run aggregate supply curve, causes of upward sloping short-run aggregate supply curve, factors affecting change in short-run aggregate supply curve, achievement of equilibrium in the economy, effect of change in aggregate demand and aggregate supply on equilibrium. Now, what is short-run aggregate supply? We have already done the aggregate demand side, the other side is the aggregate supply. Aggregate supply curve of the short run shows the quantity supplied of all goods and services, that is real GDP of output at different price levels ceteris paribus. SRAS, or you can say short run aggregate supply, is actually upward sloping. It specifies a direct relationship between the price level and the quantity supplied of real GDP. We have shown this short run aggregate supply curve in the figure 1. On x axis we have taken real GDP or quantity demanded. On y axis we have shown the price level. When the price is OP1, quantity supplied by producers is OQ1, and when the price level rises to OP2, the producers supply OQ2 of the quantity of real GDP. So, this shows a direct relationship between price level and quantity supplied. That is why it is upward sloping. Now, why does this short run aggregate supply curve slope upward, or why producers supply more when the price level rises and why they supply less when the price level falls? Why it is so? There are certain reasons. Number 1 is sticky wages. Some economists are of the view that wages remain sticky or inflexible. Due to contract between workers and management, wages remain locked for a few years. This provides security to workers, and management also has knowledge of labor costs. Firms pay nominal wages, for example, rupees 100 per hour, but actually the demand for labor is a function of real wages. Real wages are nominal wages divided by the price level. So, real wages is equal to nominal wages divided by price level. Now, there is a direct relationship between the real wage rate and quantity supplied of labor. As the real wages rise, quantity supplied of labor rises, and as the real wages fall, quantity supplied of labor falls. At higher real wage rates, the laborers want to work more because they want to earn more, and when the real wages fall, now they are willing to work for fewer hours. The quantity demanded of labor is inversely related to real wage rate. With rise in real wage rate, demand for labor falls. This means that firms would like to employ less when the real wages are increased, and with fall in real wage rate, demand for labor rises. When real wages are low, then firms like to employ more labor. Now, when prices fall but wages are sticky, at that time real wages increase and producers find that cost of labor has increased, so they demand less labor and output is also produced less. This decreases the quantity supplied. Thus, we can say that with fall in prices, there is decline in quantity supplied, and with rise in prices, there is increase in the quantity supplied, and sticky wages is the reason for this. Till now, we have discussed what is aggregate supply curve. It shows the quantity supplied by the producers at different price levels, and we have shown that sticky wages is one of the causes of upward sloping supply curve. Now, the other reason for upward sloping supply curve is sticky prices. In an economy, some prices adjust very quickly, but others don't. Stock prices usually adjust in seconds or minutes. As the demand for a stock rises, its price rises almost immediately, and if demand falls, its price also falls almost immediately. All of you must have experienced that share prices go on changing continuously every day because of the changes in demand for the stocks. On the other hand, magazine price, restaurant meal price and so on don't adjust so quickly as the stock prices. Some prices appear to be sticky over some period of time. They are sticky as there are costs for changing prices called menu costs. The menu costs include such things as the cost of printing new catalog with new prices for a catalog company, the cost of printing a new menu for restaurant, and the cost of changing price tags for many firms. Now, supposing the demand for the commodities falls and prices come down. So, as some firms lower the prices and demand has fallen, sales of the firms with sticky prices decline. Why? Because the firms which have kept their prices sticky, they think that the change in demand is only temporary, and if they change the prices, there will be menu costs. So, that is why they don't change their prices, while the prices by other firms of other commodities have fallen. So, what happens? Their demand comes down, and so they will produce less. Output is reduced by the firms which are having the sticky prices. Thus, we can say that if some prices are sticky, a decline in the price level will result in decrease in the quantity supplied of real GDP. Another reason is the producers' misconceptions. There is a difference between absolute price and relative price. The absolute price of a commodity is in terms of money. Supposing we say that price of a TV is rupees 10,000, that is the absolute price. The relative price of a good is the price of that good in terms of an other good, what we can get in place of the other commodity. So, when like exchange of commodities, that is the relative price. Generally, producers produce more when the relative price of their good rises and produce less as the relative price of their good falls. So, when prices rise in the economy, a producer thinks that the price of his commodity has risen more and the price of the other commodities has not risen in the same proportion. He thinks that the relative price of his commodity has increased. So, what he does, because he thinks the relative price has increased, he starts producing more of the commodity. So, output rises as well as there is increase in the aggregate supply. So, because of the producer's misconceptions regarding the relative change in prices, we find that with the rise in price, aggregate supply rises, and with fall in price, aggregate supply falls. Another reason is workers' misperceptions. Just as producers may misperceive relative price changes, workers may misperceive real wages. For example, the nominal wage is rupees 100 per hour and price level as measured by price index is 4. So, the real wage rate in this case is 100 divided by 4 is rupees 25. Now, suppose the nominal wages fall to rupees 75 instead of now rupees 100 and the price level also falls to 3. The real wage is nominal wages divided by the price level. So, this is 75 divided by 3 is equal to rupees 25. So, real wage is exactly the same, but workers may not know this. Workers think that their real wage has fallen. So, what do? Now they reduce their supply. They want to work for fewer hours because they are thinking real wage has fallen. So, naturally, when they are willing to work for less hours, supply of labor falls, and with that output produced by the producers will also decline. So, because of the workers' misperceptions regarding wage rate also, as the price falls, supply falls, and as the price rises, supply also rises. Now, we will see what are the shifts in the short run aggregate supply curve and why does that take place. Whenever there is a change in wage rate or prices of non-labor inputs, productivity of labor, or there are supply shocks, there is a change in the aggregate supply curve or it will shift to the right or to the left depending upon the situation. So, now we will see how these factors affect changes in the aggregate supply curve. So, firstly we talk of wage rate. Wages of labor are cost of production for a firm. Profit per unit is equal to price per unit minus cost per unit. So, whenever wages rise, cost per unit rises. This means profits will fall if the prices remain constant, and the firms will like to produce less and aggregate supply falls. On the other hand, if wages reduce, then naturally the profit per unit will increase if the prices remain same, and finding the profits rising, the producers are encouraged to produce more. So, production rises and along with that aggregate supply also rises, that shifts to the right. We can show this in the diagram. In figure 2, we have shown real GDP on x-axis, price level is shown on y-axis. SRAS1 is the original short run aggregate supply curve. So, at the price OP1, quantity supplied is OQ1. Now, when the wage rate falls but price is same OP1, what happens? That profit per unit increases because of the fall in wage rate, and with rising profits now producers supply OQ3 quantity, that is more than OQ1, and we get a new short run aggregate supply curve SRAS3, that is shifting to the right. And when the wage rate rises, profit per unit will fall because of the increase in the cost of production, and the producers would like to produce less. Production will be reduced, and now at the same price OP1 they are supplying OQ2 of the quantity, that is less than the earlier supply, and this point is on the new short run aggregate supply curve, that is SRAS2, and you find here that now it has shifted to the left. So you can say that with lower wage rates SRAS curve shifts to the right, and with higher wage rate it shifts to the left. So supply curve shifts because of the change in wage rate. Now the other factor which can lead to change in the aggregate supply curve is price of non-labor inputs. Along with labor, there are other inputs to the production. Also, raw materials, oil and equipments etc. are used for the production. Change in their price brings shift in SRAS curve similar to the change in wage rate. Whenever there is increase in the price of these inputs, naturally SRAS curve will be shifting to the left. Why? Because the increase in the price of inputs will increase the cost of production. If price remains the same, there will be less profits for the producers, so they would like to produce less and output will fall, and this SRAS curve will shift to the left. But on the other hand, if the prices of these inputs decline, then what happens? Then the profit per unit will rise and producers would like to produce more and aggregate supply will rise, leading to the shifting of aggregate supply curve to the right. Thus we see that even the change in the price of non-labor inputs can bring shift in the aggregate supply curve. Now productivity of labor is another thing which can cause change in the aggregate supply. Output produced by a unit of labor over some period of time is called productivity of labor. An increase in labor productivity means that firms will produce more output with the same amount of labor. This will make SRAS curve shift rightward. So what happens that whenever the productivity of labor rises, now they are able to produce more, then naturally total production rises and the quantity supplied also increases, and short run aggregate supply curve will shift to the right. And if there is decrease in labor productivity, then what would happen? Then naturally the total output will reduce and quantity supplied at the same price will also fall. SRAS curve, which is short run aggregate supply curve, will shift to the left in that case. Increased education, capital stock and enhanced technology increases the labor productivity. Another factor affecting the aggregate supply is supply shocks. Major natural and institutional changes on the supply side of the economy affecting aggregate supply are considered as supply shocks. If there is a bad weather, supposing there are too much rains or no rains, there will be reduction in the agricultural production. This is a supply shock. So, because of this, what would happen? That the aggregate supply will fall and SRAS curve will shift to the left. Reduced supply of oil imports or increase in tax rates or decrease in tax rates also come in this category. So, they also affect changes in the aggregate supply curve. So, you have seen that whenever there is adverse supply shocks, it will shift SRAS curve leftward, and beneficial supply shocks shift the curve to the right direction. If there are good rains, or supposing tax rates are lowered by the government, or prices of oil imports fall, then it will be considered as beneficial supply shocks. This will lead to increase in the production and there will be shifting of SRAS curve to the right. Supply shocks get reflected in resource or input prices. Till now we have discussed what are the causes of upward sloping supply curve. They have been sticky prices, producers' misconceptions, workers' misconceptions, and we have also seen what causes shift in the aggregate supply curve, and these factors have been wage rate, prices of non-labor inputs, productivity of labor and supply shocks. Now we will see how there is short run equilibrium achieved through aggregate demand and short run aggregate supply curve. We will see in the diagram, that is figure number 3. In figure 3, we have shown real GDP on x-axis and on y-axis we are showing price level. We already know that aggregate demand curve is downward sloping, short run aggregate supply curve is upward sloping. Both these curves intersect each other at E. So, this is the point of equilibrium. Equilibrium price level is OPE and equilibrium quantity demanded and supplied is OQE. At other points there is disequilibrium. Supposing if the price is OP1 rather than OPE, what happens here? Here the quantity demanded is P1A and quantity supplied is P1B. Now the producers are willing to supply more but demand is less. So there is excess supply of A, B, and due to this excess supply there is tendency of reduction in price. So price will come down to OPE. It will not remain to OP1, it will come to OPE. On the other hand, if the price is OP2, then P2C is the supply done by the producers while demand is P2K. Now here demand is more, there is excess demand by CK. This leads to rise in price to OPE. So the stable price is only OPE where aggregate demand is equal to aggregate supply. At other points there is disequilibrium and market forces operate to bring the prices to the equilibrium level. Now we will see how the changes in the aggregate demand and aggregate supply affect the equilibrium. So firstly we will take the case of change in aggregate demand. Whenever there is increase in aggregate demand, price level rises and real GDP also increases. When there is a decrease in aggregate demand, price level falls and real GDP also falls. This is shown in figure 4. We have shown real GDP on x-axis, price level is shown on y-axis, short run aggregate supply curve is there, upward sloping curve, AD is the original demand curve and equilibrium is at A, where price is OP and quantity demanded and supplied or real GDP is OQ. Now we take the case that aggregate demand rises. The aggregate demand may rise in the economy because of the increase in population, because of the increase in the incomes of the people, or because of some change in taste and preferences, etc. So aggregate demand shifts to the right, that is AD1. Now it is cutting the old SRAS at point B, and what do you see here? Price has increased and real GDP has also increased. So what you can say, that as aggregate demand rises, price level increases as well as quantity demanded and supplied also rises. There is increase in the real GDP of the country. On the other side, if there is fall in aggregate demand due to supposing decline in population or declining incomes or some other reason but not the price, then the aggregate demand curve shifts to the left. So this AD2 is showing the decrease in demand and now it is cutting SRAS at point C. And what do you see here? Now the price has come down to OP2 and real GDP has also declined to OQ2. So what you can say, that with increase in aggregate demand, price rises, real GDP rises, and with fall in aggregate demand, price falls and real GDP also falls. After having seen what is the effect of change in aggregate demand on the equilibrium price, we can also find out what is the effect of change in aggregate supply on the equilibrium price. An increase in aggregate short run supply reduces the equilibrium price and increases the real GDP, and a decrease in aggregate short run supply increases the price and reduces the real GDP. This is shown in figure 5. On OX axis we have shown real GDP, price is on Y axis, aggregate demand curve is the first aggregate demand curve AD, and SRAS is the original supply curve. Now the equilibrium is at E, where price is OP and real GDP is OQ. Now there is increase in supply and we have shown the SRAS1 which is showing increased supply. We have already done that what can be the reasons for increase in supply. It can be lower wage rates or lower input prices or increase in labor productivity, or due to some other supply changes there is increase in supply. Now with increase in supply, what happens, that you see new equilibrium price is OP1 because the equilibrium is at now A and quantity supplied or real GDP is OQ1. So what you can say, when there is increase in supply, price falls and real GDP has increased. On the other hand, when there is a decrease in supply and SRAS2 is there, this is showing decrease in supply. Again reasons can be, it can be higher wage rates or higher input prices or low labor productivity or adverse supply shocks. So there is decrease in the supply. Then what happens? Price has now increased to OP2 and real GDP has come down to OQ1. to corresponding to the new equilibrium point B. So, in real life also you have seen whenever there is increase in the supply, you find the lower prices, and when there is decrease in supply, prices have increased and you have to pay more prices for the commodities. So, dear students, now you have seen what is the short run aggregate supply curve. Why does SRAS, that is short run aggregate supply curve, slope upward, and the reasons have been sticky wages, sticky prices, producers misperceptions and workers misperceptions. Causes of shift in aggregate supply curve have been wage rate, price of non-labor inputs, productivity of labor and supply shocks. And we have also discussed that equilibrium in the economy is achieved by the intersection of aggregate demand and aggregate supply, and we have also seen what is the effect of change in aggregate demand and aggregate supply on the equilibrium. In the next lecture, we will discuss about the consumption function. Thank you.